Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 32 breakdown for the Paris regionals that happened this past weekend. And real quick before we start, this one's a little bit different for this top 32, specifically because I was not able to get the full top 32 cut for this event. I was able to get all of the leaders and all the names of the players, but not the exact builds for every deck in this top 32. So because of that, we are missing two different leaders that are unique. We did not see the Star Deck 10 Luffy list, and we do not know the Bonnie list as of recording, but I will be updating it if people send me more of this info for it. Also, if you are in the top 32 and you want to submit it, there is a link right here to a form. Just click this button, fill out this form here, and I will get it onto the site. So if you guys know the list, or you know the people who know the list, let me know. I want to try to keep this as up to date as possible. Also, I've been doing a lot of work keeping the OP10 section for the Eggman events website as up to date as possible. We do have a lot of deck lists, a lot of events. I was also able to get the Athens collectibles regional, the top 8 for this one, so this one is a little bit trickier to find as well, but I've been able to do some community support, and I really appreciate everyone helping out for that one. And we do just have a bunch of deck lists for this format as well on my deck list page. We have almost 300 deck lists right here, so if you guys want to see what they look like, see some different builds, make sure to check it out already. And there are some filters if you guys want to try to find them a little bit easier. So lastly, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We do a lot of work and content for the One Piece card game, and that's not going to end anytime soon, so make sure to hit that like and subscribe. So jumping on into this one though, this was a 900 plus player event. This was 10 rounds of Swiss best of 1 into a top 32 day 2 best of 3 cut with the April 1st restriction list in effect. And of that top 32, we do have 7 copies of Shanks, 6 copies of Marshall.D.Teach, 4 Dofi, 3 Lim, 3 Lucci, 2 Usopp, 2 purple Luffy, and then singles of Smoker, Monkey.D.Luffy from Star Deck 10, Marco, Nami, and Bonnie as well. So again, a lot of diversity for leaders that we've been seeing in this format in general. Also comparing and contrasting it to the event that we had also this weekend in Top Cut, we do see like a good amount of Shanks for both of these, and Teach a little bit more so on the North American side, and then still a good amount of diversity here for Europe, which is interesting to see the difference between the two regions, right? I definitely think that from my experience, North American players generally try to just jump to the deck that they think is the strongest in general for this format, compared to where I see, a lot of Europeans trying different decks a little bit more and having a little bit more diversity, and just kind of doing, believing in individual decks more than just kind of like the deck that they think is the best in the format. So it's really interesting to see that compare and contrast there as well. But I don't have much more on the intro side. We are going to go over the top placing list for the list that we have for each leader. I will say one last thing though, big shout outs to Roa Noah, TCG, for helping me find these deck lists. He was a really big help for doing that. You can check out their Twitter, and they also did get a first place on their store regionals this past weekend with Shanks too, so you can check out that list too. But jumping on into it for our first build, we do have Doflamingo. So this is Gaston's version of the deck here, and it's been really interesting to see how strong Doflamingo has been despite it getting a restriction with the restriction list. I do think Jinbei was a bit of a weak add at the time. I felt like there were just super strong cards in this deck, like either 2-drop Teach or 4-drop Boa. One of those three I felt our Law. I didn't think Law was going to get hit because I knew it was getting a reprint. So outside of 4-drop Law, which I think is generically the strongest card in this deck, Teach and Boa I felt were a little bit more conducive for slowing down the playstyle for Dofi. But as we've been getting later and later into this meta, I feel like Jinbei was the best hit for this deck, to be weaker, not high roll as much, but be able to still be very present in this meta. So I think it was a really accurate call, and it's been really cool to see what people have been using those 4 additional slots for Doflamingo now that Jinbei has been removed. So I think the newest cards that we've been seeing from this one, and the cards that we don't see as often, one, we see Kaya at 2 copies. This is a 2K, and also this can help you in some situations where you need to just filter out some cards either in our hand or even at the top of our deck, right? We do so much top of our deck searching with the cards in our deck that, for example, let's say we've played Buggy and realize that 3 of those cards that we see in the top, 2 of them are just stinky. So you can use something like Kaya to be able to filter 2 of them out, and then be able to use like a Buggy or another like top 5 later to maybe get some better results from that too. Or also, like, you can use something like Buggy to be like, oh, well, I found the red rock, then I can use Kaya to draw it and then use it, and that can help you in some situations too. So I think that's very, very strong in its own cases. And worst case, Kaya is just a 2K. so that helps as well. And then also the 7-drop Doflamingo. This is really good for getting rid of some like interesting costed cards, right? 7 or less hits, I think, most cards in the game right now. Also, if you have like some weird tempo plays, sometimes you can just bounce your own 1-drop it back in your hand if that makes more sense. But this has been very, I think, strong in this current meta, especially with like 8-drop Moria not being around. It does dodge 8-drop Kid, which is a bit of an unfortunate thing. But honestly, I don't think like green and you know, decks that use Eustace Kid are as present in this meta as people were expecting. It is still present, but it's not super duper present, right? We only saw one Bonnie in this top 32. Bonnie hasn't topped every regionals. We've seen like a little bit of Smoker, but by and large, that I think that that card is not as needed to play around. We are still playing the Red Hawk and Raging Tiger as well to help get that additional removal. But I really do like the addition of this card for like a medium high end card that also is searchable off Sengoku, since it is a 7 Warlords of the Sea, and it doesn't really care about the cost of the card that you're searching as well. So generally speaking, I think this is a cool version of Doflamingo. Some nice little tech choices. I think this deck is still very present in this meta, which I like to see. So this is the build from Gaston, and congratulations for their first place with Doflamingo. Next up, we've got Angelo's version of Marshall.D.Teach, and compared to the North American side of this weekend, this is running more of what I would call the standard build of Marshall.D.Teach. There has been more of like the casino build, where it's more so like using the I bid 500 million berries to help you get some better trigger luck, but also get some weird removal against cards that have protection, specifically like the Burgess in the Mirror match. I also have been seeing a little bit more people going back on the Laboon. This card wasn't very present at the beginning of this format. I think most people were playing copies of the new Kuzan. You know, this deck space for this deck was pretty small already for tech cards, and when they added a new super rare that you had to add 4 copies of, it made it really easy to cut Laboon, I think, for a lot of cases. But I do think this card is still very strong. A lot of people are, you know, experimenting at it like 2 to 3 copies, and I think it makes sense. Being able to get the cost reduction to get some more removal with cards like you know, Finger Pistol or Black Hole, or just a lot of other things, like even just still like the classic Dock Q into Laboon removal is still really, really good in my experience. So I do think that's very helpful. We do have to kind of, again, be kind of cognizant of the space in the deck, right? We're only down to 3 copies of Von Augur, but I think that's really fine because it is very, you know, researchable with Kuzan. This really helps out the deck and lets you kind of get the pieces you need and on the times that you need it, which is really, really nice. And though one thing is that, you know, if we were playing Laboon, we did have to remove space from this deck from somewhere, and we aren't playing any of the new 3-cost Shiryu, which generally speaking, I think a lot of people are generally on this card. It made sense at the beginning of this format too, when I think we were playing against more copies of Zoro, and I think that you know, Doflamingo was still present too. Being able to remove like a 3-drop Chopper is really strong without any like card investment, but also like getting rid of like Teach, I think, is good. But I'm not too surprised that this card is leaving a little bit, right? It's sometimes like, oh, it removes one thing once, and it's a little bit tricky to get rid of, right? Because the 7k on defense is a pretty big power level here. But like, it makes sense, right? If you're playing Laboon, right, the fact that it also only cares about the original cost, that you can't like get the removal on something, you know, with the reduction, right? So with that, I think that makes sense to remove. But it's mostly, I think, just a meta call that less people are on Zoro in particular, which you know, Zoro did not even top this event, so I think that's a key insight for it. Most people, I think, you know, aggressive decks like Zoro, I think, are very present at the beginning of formats when people are playing unoptimized decks, but then as we get farther and farther, I think seeing less of that makes a little bit more sense. So anyways, not much more to say. Congratulations to Angelo with their finish with Marshall.D.Teach. And then moving to top 4, we've got 2 more additional decks, which I didn't really mention it, but we had 4 unique decks in the top 4, which I think is really indicative of how this meta is doing and how diverse it is. We also see Elcaro's list of Nami here, which, going back in time, we did have this previous weekend in Pasadena, which I was at, where we did get Nami winning the entire event, right? We did have the build here from Unlikely Hero to be able to win the event, right? This was an unlikely win, I would say, for everyone. And I think most people, including myself, were like, okay, you know, this was a one-time thing, you know, being able to be a good format. You know, he's a really good Nami player too. So he did win like the past Pasadena regional in a different format with Nami as well. But I do think that this is a deck where people still have to respect it. Nami has been around since set 3 from this game, and because of that, it's been coming, you know, in rotation of how meta and relevant it is. And if you don't remember the specific way to play against Nami, you give them so much free value that they can use to win the game, which I think is impactful. So this is also a unique build, and that's something that I've been seeing a lot more for Nami builds recently, is that the decks that do well are not carbon copies of each other, right? Generically, when this card came out in set 3, there was one 50 card list that made sense, that was the most optimal, and people would not stray away from it, right? Now, with I think us being later into this meta, there are in the card game in general too, there are different builds and I think a lot more tech options that people can choose to play with Nami. And I do think that is interesting from where it, again, used to be just a boilerplate like 50 you had to run. So generically speaking, some interesting card choices. One, we see Nojiko at 2 copies. This was obviously made for the deck in OP03. It was kind of experimented with, but I think most people felt like it was a little bit slow and didn't do enough for what it did to defensive enough for the leader effect. But I think we're in a spot where a lot of people are playing a lot of great 5 drops, specifically like Smoker's been really good playing against Lim. They play a lot of 5 costs, right? This hits just a lot of decks and a lot of cards that people are playing inherently, right? I think 5 cost Luffy has been one of the strongest cards in this game right now. So even though it's a card with rush, putting it back into your opponent's hand so they have to recommit that Dawn is almost the same as like removing it in a lot of ways too. So I think this Nojiko has been a good add and it's been very helpful. We also do have Cavendish. So this is from OP10, not direct support, but when attacking once per turn, you get to draw 2 cards and trash 1 from your hand. So the fact that this does let us go 2 deeper into our deck for just a mild investment of 4 Dawn and hoping your opponent doesn't remove it is pretty good. I think most people will be cycling out their removal cards when playing against Nami too. So being able to have that kind of meta game where I can play Cav on 4, and then if you didn't keep Trafalgar Law, if you're playing Dofi or you don't have any removal for it, this can get some like defensive removal on cards by attacking into it, but also the draw 2 and trash 1 is just very invaluable too, which I think is really strong. So lastly, we do have an oldie but a goodie. We got Overheat, so this is an OP01 card. So counter up to one of your leaders or characters gains plus 4,000 power for this battle, then return up to 1 active character with the cost of 3 or less to the owner's hand. So this generally can be used for bouncing back your own copies of like Kaya, since it doesn't care which side of the board it is, or even like Nojiko after you use it, which I think is very strong, but it can be used defensively as well, which I think most people are using Snake Dance for kind of the same idea, but this being able to bounce back something on your opponent's side when there are a good amount of like 3 costs running around, I think is helpful too. Specifically like 3 cost Sanji, I think has been very strong in this format, so Overheat being able to answer it without giving the the draw either is really, really good. So other than that, I think this is a really cool build. It's been interesting to see the tech choices and kind of postulate what they could be used for and what meta choices they're for. But it's been really cool to see Nami still be relevant despite literally everything, right? This being like set 10 and this is a set 3 leader. This being a little bit more of an aggressive format than we've been seeing previously, but I think Nami's been still very present and it's very interesting to see. So this is Elcaro's version, and congratulations for their top 4 with Nami. And to wrap up the top 4, we've got the build of Lim from Vins, which is a pretty interesting build for this one. Generally speaking, Lim kind of hit the scene, I think, popularity wise, and convinced me last week with the win in London last week. And so because of that, I think a lot of people have been looking at this deck and been trying it out pretty successfully as well. And I think this leader is just very interesting with the support that we got from OP10. So generally speaking, the list that won London was more of an event that used the Devil Fruit and also being able to use the Kamazo so you can get some free advantage. This one is bypassing that, and instead of using that 1-drop, we're using the Scratch Mana Poo. It's just a 1-drop 2k that if we need to be able to play one more body out on the board to be able to get some interaction for our effects, we have this one here that can get this on play effect to interact with some like smaller blockers. I think there are a lot of decks that are playing blockers that are hit with this card, so it can be helpful for especially going for game a lot of the time. Usohachi as well is like a 3-drop version of the same thing. We're going to get to 8 or more Dawn for most of this game, so that's very helpful, and being able to rest most blockers that are used in the game right now can be very strong. We are running also 2 copies of Top Knot as well as 4 copies of Blast Breath. I really like this card in this meta right now. I think it's very, very strong for what it is, and especially because it's very easy for us to get to 10 Dawn. It's also very easy for us to be able to have 1 or 2 Dawn open at the end of any turn. this just makes it very easy for us to be very defensive, be very aggressive, right? It helps us defend our board. And if our board stays around, like we get a lot of additional resources every turn, like, 5-drop 6K stays on there. So I've been really enjoying using Blast Breath myself. We do have the Audio 2K. This one, I feel some people might get priced out from this a little bit. This is not needed. I'll say this every time. I think that this is likely still like incrementally the best 2K in the spot, but you do not have to run it. You can definitely run like the Ace or any other of the 2Ks as well. There is also the Nami 2-drop, which I personally do like that card a lot. Not only is it just a good way to be able to cheaply get another body on board if we need our effects, but sometimes being able to lock our opponent out of their Dawn can help us in some late game scenarios too. So generally speaking, it's been really cool to see how Lim's been working. It is a deck where you do have to run pretty much like 35 to 40 cards, like the Doflamingo, like most of these cards, right? Doflamingo, Newgate, NL, Mihawk, and Sakazuki. Most of these are 4. You have to play 4 of this Lim. You have to play 4 of this Lim, right? Most of that is pretty understood, but there are a lot of like tech options you can run. Purple has a great amount of like toolbox cards too, and it's been interesting to see the tech choices people have been using for this build in the last couple weeks too. So this is Vin's version of Lim, and congratulations for their top 4 there. Next up, we've got Shanks. So this is Zyrios' top 8 version of the deck here, and again, Shanks has been very, very viable in the meta. I think I say it every week, and I've it hasn't really changed from my mind. It is, if not the strongest deck in the format, the most popular. I think it's the deck that is maybe like the default best deck in the format, where it doesn't really have any extremely relevant bad matchups. It can win a lot of matchups too. It is a little bit luck dependent because there's not a lot of consistency tools for it, but there's also a lot of different builds and ways to build the decks where you can make it difficult for your opponent to correctly identify what cards you can be playing next, or what's the kind of way that they, just the tech options have a lot of, I think, flexibility for this deck too. So generally speaking, I think there's a lot of different builds. This one is more of a red hair pirates build, and I kind of identify that by playing 4 copies of the Uta Searcher to help find us our late game. There's also like the Straw Hat package, which helps us find a little bit of our earlier game a little bit of the time. But honestly, I think Lucky Roo is such a terrifying card in this current meta right now. Like, it just generally goes 1 for 1 all the time. It's very difficult for most decks outside of Doflamingo to answer it very cleanly, and I think being able to find 4 additional ways to help find this with Uta is really worth it in this current format right now. It's been very strong. So we also have like the new Sanji, which I think a lot of decks are saying is very strong, especially if you're going first. This is a great turn 3 play, and Luffy on 5 can be just very devastating and apply a lot of pressure, and just make it so that you can safely get into your later turns with Ben Beckman, Silvers, Rayleigh, as well as Monkey.D. Dragon and the 10-drop Shanks. So we are running a little bit more of the red hair pirate cards that are generally more tech options, because I think we are playing the Uta Search and we want it not to miss as much. So we are playing 2 copies of the 5-drop blocker, Silver's Rayleigh, which this is fine, right? It has like a weird amount of like reverse synergy if you have like 10-drop Shanks out, that sometimes you don't get the draw 2 and trash 1, but I think this is a strong card in the mid to late game if you can afford to play it. And we are also playing 2 copies of the 10-cost Shanks from OP06. So this does let us KO a 10k power or less card, which is most cards in the game. I think the only one it doesn't get rid of is the 10-drop like Blackbeard. That's really relevant, and the mirror match, right? Unless you somehow have 2 of your own 10-cost Shanks to make theirs a 10-drop, and then you play your removal on play. But this hits a lot of cards. The fact that it doesn't get like the attack immediately is fine, because generally speaking, getting the removal is just as good. And sometimes you can even like make it so it's like, oh, I could have attacked with this 10-drop Shanks into the thing I wanted to remove anyway, so this is just as good. So I think that's very fair. And, we're going to see a lot of Shanks builds around, right? I think this is going to be a very strong deck right now. It's going to maybe get a little bit checked in EBO2, depending on how good green-purple Luffy does against it here in the English version as well. But, what Shanks is. You probably have your opinions on the deck. Very strong right now. Congratulations to Zyrios for their finish with Shanks. The next up, we've got 2 top 16 Usopp builds. We have the one from Donquixote as well as Progress, which there are 2 pretty different builds, which I'm really excited to go over. Onquixote is usually the standard Dressrosa build of Usopp, right? Generally speaking, they're decks that just revolve around using the 7 cost Rebecca for full cost, right? Being able to play out 2 bodies from your hand and draw a card is very good. Most people play out the 7 cost Kyros. There are some situations where the 7 cost Luffy from OP04 is the better choice, especially against something like Blackbeard, where we can attack into their 5-drop Kuzons or attack into like their active Burgesses just to apply that pressure is really, really strong. We are also playing like a good amount of the 1-drop Searchers, 4 copies of the Colosseum, which we kind of have to see sooner than later. And we are having a couple more of like the tech cards. I think the biggest tech card is the Gyats from OP04 as well. So up to one of your characters with Dressrosa type may attack your opponent's characters and active during this turn. There's some like weird scenarios where specifically, let's say we play Rebecca and we play out Kyros, right? This is a 7-drop 9k that can attack the turn it's played because it's played off the Colosseum, right? So if you don't have like a better thing to do, you can, if you don't have like a Zoro, which can also get the removal of something, instead you can use the Gyats, you can use it to target your Kyros, and then your Kyros can attack the turn it's played into anything active. And I feel like it's very, very, very strong, right? That can help you in a lot of situations for being able to get like a double removal. It does cost a 2k out of hand, but that's generally worth it. And again, you're not always going to see your Zoro. There's so many cards that you have to see optimally on curve, I think, for this deck, which even with like the searches from Leo, Rebecca, and the card draw from the leader, you're not always going to see that. So I do really like this deck. I also will say that this was a card I wasn't sold on immediately. I felt it was like a little bit clunky to get used optimally, but generally speaking, the way you should look at this card is not for the double attack, but more so the plus 6,000 power. So it generally means that all of your 1-drops are now 1-drop 5Ks because you spend 3 Dawn to make either one of these Leo or Rebecca's an 8K. And generally speaking, your opponent will not get rid of your 1-drops willy-nilly because that can net you a card draw, which can be very impactful too. So I don't have much more to say about this build though, but Onquixote, congratulations for their finish there. And I think this build's like the more traditional Dressrosa build has been doing better than most people have been thinking for Usopp. A lot of people thought that this deck was non-relevant for this format, but it's been getting a good consistent amount of tops, and happy to see this build. And then we have the more, I'd say, like new wave. A lot of people are calling it like the Sakazuki build, which I've been kind of calling it for. And the reason that it's called this, there's no Sakazuki in the deck, but the reason for it is that this is kind of looking at the blue and black Sakazuki from OP05, the way that the deck worked, and we're like, okay, we finally have another blue and black leader that can attack. What's the best way to take advantage of like the great synergy that blue and black has, right? Blue has some of the best removal effects in the game, but they're usually undercosted, and black has cost reduction, right? So because of that, you get a lot of great removal techniques, right? Jozu being able to return a 10 or less on play by bouncing a 1-drop back to your hand is such good value. Like this is such a nasty way to get some removal in this game. It's very, very good. Houndblaze has been like, part of the reason this is called the Sakazuki build, because this can take advantage of this card again, which is really strong. It means that you can, give the cost reduction for something. And we have like so many of these 1-drops that we can use Leo or Rebecca to apply like a 5k pressure if we want to, and then make it so they don't want to even attack into them because it gives you another card draw, which is really strong. So I do think that the removal potential is very high. We are also playing like 3,000 Worlds. We are also playing the Tempest kick as well. I will say that I've been doing some testing with this on my live streams recently. I do kind of like the patchwork a little bit more, since it is a searchable version of this. You don't get the card draw, but you do also get some like mild removal or stun effects from it too, which I think is interesting. You kind of get to 10 cards consistently, but sometimes you don't, and Tempest kick felt like a little bit clunky at times. Also, there's some really good synergy with the Suleiman from this deck too. So on play and when attacking, and this is not a once per turn, so if you can do both in one turn, both happen. But if your leader has the Dressrosa type, give up to one of your opponent's characters -2 cost during this turn, then trash this one card from the top of your deck. So if you have Colosseum out, there are some situations where it can be a version of Hina, where you can like use Hina, give the -4, right? Well, if there's something that you can attack to with the Suleiman, you can play it, give something -2, attack with it, give it -2, and then you can use Houndblaze on your leader to get rid of the other thing, right? Like there's like a lot of great situations with that card, and it's been one of my favorites to play in this deck in general. So other than that, we are just running like a lot of cost reduction, a lot of ways to benefit from that. We are playing 4-drop Rebecca, which the generic Dressrosa build does not run, just because it doesn't have as much synergy with those cards. But in this one is fantastic, right? You're a blocker that plays out a body that then you can block with it, and then you get to draw a card from your leader effect. All of that's really good. All that's really, really good, and I like playing like it feels good in this leader to be able to get those effects as well. So other than that, I don't have much more to say. It's been really interesting to see this build kind of show up a little bit. I don't think it did I don't think a build like this did anything in the Japanese format for their OP10 meta. So to see something of a more unique build pop up, I think is really cool. So again, this is Progress's build of the deck here. Congratulations for their finish with Usopp. We've got 3 more decks to go over, and we're just going to start with Leo's version of the Monkey.D.Luffy. Purple Luffy, I think, has been doing pretty good, right? It did end up winning the North American regionals this past weekend as well. I do think it's been doing a little bit better in North America than Europe specifically, but this has been a very strong deck ever since the star decks we got in OP08 in October of this last year. So one big tech card that I see in this build compared to others is the inclusion of the Magellan. This has always been a tempting ad and somewhat tech choice for this deck. On play, Dawn -1, you can return 1 Dawn card from your Dawn field, and so your opponent does the same. And then if this is KO'd on your opponent's turn, you get to unramp them by 2 additional Dawns. So there are some decks, especially since I think we're less aggressive right now compared to where we were at the beginning of this format, where this Magellan just does a lot of work, right? Being able to prevent Shanks from getting to 10 Dawn, I think, can help the matchup a lot. Shanks also gets rid of cards traditionally by KOing them, so I think that's a great way to kind of interact with that deck. Also, Teach, unless you're using Liberation, or Black Hole rather, they have to respect this too. And the Dawn -1 can just really get them off their curve. So if you have to go second, right, you can use Magellan to get them off the curve, which is a little bit. You really don't care about the Dawn -1 for yourself because you ramp so much since you're a purple deck, and it's been cool to see this pop up a little bit for this build too. So another card that I've been seeing a little bit more use to is the Tony Chopper. And your turn, you may return 1 of your Dawn cards from your Dawn deck to set this as active, and this gains blocker. So losing Dawn like this is a little bit expensive, I feel like, in Luffy compared to this purple Luffy compared to something like a red purple Luffy. But the effect is still really great. It's another card you can play off your Luffy Taro, which, being able to have more targets for 6Ks for that is great. A lot of people, I think, were playing the 4-drop vanilla Usopp, since it is something you could play on turn 2 if you go first. But I think the Chopper is a little bit of a stronger card just because you are able to get that blocker, and it's helpful for that. The fact that you can attack with it and then keep it active too is really good, so your opponent has less things to attack into as well. So not much more than that. I think Gamma Knife has been strong for some weird, I think it's been played for specifically a drop kid, but being able to use this to interact with other bodies and trade cleaner than I think your opponent's expecting is really good. And it's also searchable off 1-drop law, which is really, really handy. So not much more to say. I think this deck is in a good spot, and looking forward to seeing more of it in the near future as well. So there it is. Next up, we've got Marco. So this is Raphael's version of the deck here, and this is a build of Marco that I've been always kicking around. I've had a lot of people since, especially since doing well with an OP08, were like, have you ever considered an animal build of this deck, right? And it's the animal build because it's off the back of this 3-drop Chopper, right? You're on play when attacking, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, play up to 1 animal with cost of 4K power or less, and place it at the bottom of your deck in any order. And it is tempting, right? It is tempting to be more aggressive with this deck. The fact that we do some really good onboard trades, specifically because we give something -2K every turn, is really strong. But also we can do some things where we can set up the top card of our life to be able to get some instant hits, right? The fact that we can, one way or the other, we can, you play 3-drop Chopper and then put the body that we want on top of our deck to play it from our hand, or even with the just shut up and come with us, right? If we are at something like 2 Dawn, right, we can use the effect. If we have a 3-drop Chopper in our hand, we put it to the top of our deck, your opponent attacks into us, we play the Chopper. That's some instant value, right? That's very difficult for a lot of decks to instantly deal with, and you get so much value with it. There's also just this subset of weird synergy with Emporio. This obviously has already been a good card for the deck, but the fact that there's so many 2-drop animals that you can play off it, right? We have Richie, which is just a blocker, but that's still a great body to play off, and also the super spot build Duck Squad, which if you need to, you can get this back to your hand at the end of the turn. So there are some weird scenarios where you might need another 2K, but I think that's a really cool ad. And then there's also Monet, which is not an animal, but it is able to just get some synergy with getting some Dawn into your leader or somewhere else. Also get the +1K power, -1K power to something else. It's been a really good ad for the deck too. So from there, we do kind of just play like the mid to late game. We don't play like the Sanji 9-drop, which I know that card is good and helps some matchups, but the fact that it's really bad against Blackbeard, I think is a key point. I think this Marco is great, and Ace, both of these are hard to remove and get some value on the turn they're played. Josie's great, especially for like even bouncing back your super spot build Duck Squad later to get your 2k back is really good, and then a removal with Beckman as well as the Edward Newgate. So I really like what this build is looking like. I haven't tested it personally. I will be testing it later this week. But there's also like the added bonus of like Marco just has so many events that you can, live with. You can also just, use these just shut up and come with us late game, which I think Zoro sometimes has a harder time to do in their animal builds because you can keep this Marco around, which is really strong. Then lastly, we just have Seaquake just for like another like 3k removal, which just 1-for-1 I think can be really handy. So really cool with this build. I like it a lot. And I definitely have to do some testing, and congratulations to Raphael for their finish there. And then to wrap it up, we do have Rob Lucci. So this is Elnino's version of the deck here, and it's been really cool to see, kind of in the same way as Dofi, but maybe to not as much success. Rob Lucci just being still relevant despite losing 2 of its best cards, right? The Gecko Moria 8-drop as well as Ice Age, right? I think those cards just really defined how this deck could work. It could really take advantage of it, but generally speaking, the probably most broken combo in this deck is still 4-drop Rebecca being able to interact with 3-cost Spandine, and from one Rebecca play being able to play 2 bodies out immediately, and then a 4th body where generally speaking is Rob Lucci, but you can also use Kaku or the Khalifa to get some card like some reduction or some card draw, and then get some removal afterwards too. So as long as that combo still exists, I think Rob Lucci is still relevant in some capacity, and I still think is like mildly thriving in this format. The removal from it is still, I think, unparalleled for smaller bodies on the board, which is really good. I do think that because Gecko Moria is gone, we can shift into running 4 whole copies of this Kaido, which really helps our matchup against Blackbeard, which was generally a rough matchup for us. I do like the addition of the Laboon for this deck too. I see also a lot of people playing the 2-cost Uta from the Star deck to be able to get some additional reduction, and like Brooke is still a really good card. Hina is still a really good card. And I like the add of the Tashigi as well. So I do explain this every time I see it in Lucci. You don't get the -4 cost, but the activate main, if this character was played this turn to trash up to 1 card, is still relevant for this deck. So if you are able to get the cost reduction, you are able to remove like a Burgess, for example, right? It's not an activate, it's an activate main. So even if they turn off your on plays, you can still use it. And then you get to trash a card with 0 cost. So the fact that it trashes it means that you don't get the KO, which means it bypasses KO destruction too. So even like just a simple play of like I play Laboon and then Tashigi can get rid of a copy of Burgess, which I think is strong in the late game as well. So other than that, I think this deck is really good. I don't have much more notes to say about it, but it's been really cool to see Rob Lucci still viable, I think, in this meta. So this is Elnino's version of the build here. And that's going to be it for this one. I know I was kind of rambling towards the end here, but there's just so much to talk about, right? This is such a good format. There's so many different decks, and even within specific leaders, a lot of decks have different builds, a lot of different ways to have tech options, and it's been really, really cool to see all the expression in this last month as well. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, make sure to hit that like button already, and we'll catch you all next time.